So what I do to record? Is it automatic?
It's recording. Yeah, yeah.
What the fuck is this thing?
Carl fell into the cactus. Yeah, this guy got in the way. We're not doing audio. I'm not mic'd up anyhow. Yeah, it's been crazy, especially with the rain. It got down to like 31. Oh, wow. So we had a little bit of frost.
And this thing was probably like a river.
Yeah, all of this stuff floods out.
Oh, wow.
All right. So, we're here. Hey, good morning, guys. I'm the Tech Prepper. Hope you're all doing well. We're out here for another episode of No Random Contacts. This is going to be our most ambitious contact. In fact, we already had one fail that's putting us at a disadvantage for today. So our goal or mission objective today is to try to make a targeted contact to a gentleman out in Tennessee, Jason KM4ACK. Check out his YouTube channel, all the way out here from New River, Arizona. So I'm out here portable with Carl from Chameleon Antennas, and we're going to be looking at the Chameleon Tactical Dipole 2.0. And we're going to run this in a configuration that I've been wanting to experiment, and that's the Terminated Sloping V. And the reason why we're using that is we want to have a directional antenna with essentially gain to shoot a bearing directly to Tennessee. Our first fail today actually has to do with the portable mast. My buddy forgot the mast. It was a 25-foot CHA portamast, and I had installed a receiver hitch here, and I had a couple of cool pieces of gear here to try out this new mast, and unfortunately we're not going to be able to use it, so we're going to adapt. And this is our X factor or challenge, because in 2 hours we have to hit our comma window, and we're going to have to use this Palo Verde. It's not quite at the right height, and deploy the matching unit, or the matching unit up in the air with a throw bag. So we'll see how that goes. So stick around, a lot of good stuff today, and we're going to do an after action report as always after the exercise. All right, guys, not that I want to start a drinking game here, but every time we have a fail, take a shot of something you like. So I had prepared this micro paracord. That's just the coyotes. I had prepared this micro paracord with some knots at every 10 feet so that I could pace out how far we need to establish the line for our opening angle for this antenna, because we're going to put it out at an opening V. And my buddy went ahead and removed the knots since we're improvising and are going to use a throw bag. So this should be fun. I never use a throw bag. Again, our trees are pretty sad and look something like this. All right, guys, we've got 2 hours and 12 minutes before we have to hit our scheduled comma window. So we're going to let the expert toss up his throw bag here, and we're going to try to get it over one of the branches there that is in a V configuration. So this is why we also give ourselves some time. Perfect. There we go. All right, so we've got the rope in the tree. We've got the matching unit with the 50 foot of RG 58 with the integrated RFI choke at the bottom. And we're gonna thread it through the eyelet and bring this up. And we're just gonna do a test at this moment to see if this is a good spot for us before we go crazy. And the cool thing about this antenna is that it has two terminating resistors that will actually null the back end, so that we will literally have a unidirectional antenna pointing at the angle that that's along our bearing. So we have two of these terminating resistors, and on the top side there we have 25 feet of the counterpoise wire that will deploy at the end. And then we have the HPD, which is the high performance antenna kit. And this is 100 or 108 feet of antenna cable. So we're gonna attach this side to one end of the matching unit, and then bring it out to one leg, do the same thing with this one, and then we'll go ahead and bring out the counterpoise wires. All right, guys, I'm not sure if this is going to come out, but we have the matching unit up there. It's actually working out better than if we had improvised my temporary painter's pole. It actually did not fit in the Jeep. Ultimately, it'd be fun to try out the CHA Portamast 25. But what I'm going to do now is I've got my compass. I already have it set for the declination in this area, and that's roughly 10 degrees as of 2023. And I already have it set for a bearing of 77 degrees, which is Jason KM4ACK's bearing in Tennessee. And all we're going to do is put the dog in the doghouse. And it looks like this is our rough bearing. We kind of knew that to begin with. So what I'm going to do is run out, where is it? The first set of wire off in this direction, because we are shooting for a 75-degree angle for the 12-meter band.
Keep it an angle so it doesn't snag into the trees when I put the puppy up, just like this.
Oh, you just want me to hold that?
Just, yeah, give him some slack slowly. Yep. Oh, so what I do to record, is it automatic?
It's recording, yeah.
What the fuck is this thing?
Carl fell into the cactus. Yeah, this guy got in the way. Okay, it happens. So we got a bunch of choyas there too. So guys, we're gonna go ahead and unwind this. I don't know if you can hold this guy too without stabbing yourself. So these little choyas are monsters here, so don't get one of those attached to you. Yeah, for some of you guys who've seen my other videos, you know these little suckers always get me. And that's one of the reasons why I always carry the multi-tool in one hand, because they will stick to you and they're kind of painful. One thing the manual talks about is prepping your stuff beforehand. And I wouldn't underestimate the amount of effort I put in prepping the terminating resistors to start with. It's actually saving quite a bit of time out here in the field. We're 108 feet out now. So Carl mentioned that these can actually go directly on the ground. I did not realize that. So we're going to take his tent stake and mark this position, and we're going to go ahead and run out the ground radials directly back. Is that correct? Excellent. We're just putting some tension, and we'll let the master do his thing here. All right, so we've got the transformer right on the ground, and then we're going to run up the 25 foot of counterpoise going directly behind it. And then we'll do the same thing to the other side in roughly 75 degrees in the other direction.
Anybody else across the pond that's this side? Mike and the 0 sugar Alpha Polly.
Kilo Tango 7 Romeo Uniform November.
Kilo Tango 7 something?
Romeo Uniform November. Romeo Uniform November. QSL?
Rob. No problem at all. Radio United November. Very good. Well, nice to meet you here. Looks like for the first time. My name's Simon. Simon Sierra, India, Mike Ulster, November. 40 miles from our main capital, Belfast, Northern Ireland. And you're 5 and 5, 5 and 4. Go ahead.
All right, guys, so this was a station we worked in Ireland. It was a random contact. So we've had a few fails today, but this fail in particular has to do with the fact that our primary frequency we allocated is actually in use by this DX net. So we're gonna have to wait 5 minutes for our next schedule at 17:05 UTC. So this is why in the plan, in the combo plan, I had put multiple frequencies so that we can move down 5 kilohertz. And the goal for today, to have this truly be a targeted off-grid contact, was to have no interaction over the cell phone or internet. So Jason and I are not using a cell phone, period. So we're going to stick to the schedule, and unfortunately we're going to have to wait 5 more minutes because we're going to miss our first window with the DX that's going on. All right, I'm going to go up frequency. Kilo Mike 4 Alpha Charlie Kilo from Kilo Tango 7 Romeo Uniform November. All right, guys, well, I screwed up again. I was actually up 5 kilohertz and I was supposed to be down 5 kilohertz. It's okay, we've got one more frequency. It's now 1710 UTC, so I'm actually on figures 24.960. It's been the morning, guys.
We'll go through here in just a second. If not,
Alpha Charlie Kilo from Kilo Tango 7 Romeo Uniform November.
Kilo Tango 7, Romeo Uniform November. This is Kilo Mike 4, Alpha Charlie Kilo, QSL.
QSL, you are 5'9". Dude, you knocked it out of the park. How are you doing this morning, Jason?
Outstanding. I'm going to give you about a 4-1 from here. You're just barely moving the needle, but definitely glad to make the contact. Current weather conditions are 43 degrees and cloudy. Has been raining here all morning.
Acknowledge all. Thank you for the weather report. Local conditions are figures 6.3 degrees Fahrenheit. Clear skies, nice and sunny. Back to you.
QSL, copy. 56.3 degrees Fahrenheit. QSL.
QSL. Jason, I made a goof and actually went up 5 kilohertz. The primary frequency was Ireland. Were you able to acknowledge the Ireland station on the primary frequency?
I did not attempt a QSO with him as we were getting close. I did hear your call to him earlier before I turned on the camera and saw that you got a contact, or heard that you got a contact with him, but I did not reach out.
Very good, sir. If you have some time, do you want to go ahead and see if we can do digital and move up the schedule?
Sure, that would be great. Let's continue here on 12 meters, and I can go ahead and QSY to 24955, which is the first in the list, and attempt that digital contact.
All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that field exercise. Obviously, it was a success, and I have to give a big shout out to everybody who helped, Jason KM4ACK, and Carl from Chameleon in particular. A couple of other operators, my buddy William and another YouTuber, Robert, helped me out as well. I made contacts with all three. They're all in the state of Tennessee. And what I want to talk about in this video is how I was able to put together a plan to do a targeted contact. That's what I'm about, that's what the channel's about, and that's the direction we're going to keep going. Up until this point, I've had a lot of success doing targeted contacts as part of the No Random Contact series in my home state of Arizona, but also the Southwest. So let's go ahead and start a screen recording. And the way that I like to start all of these no random contacts is by creating a communications plan for myself. Now, bear in mind that I am not an experienced operator. I have less than 3 years of experience on the air, and I'm making a bunch of this crap up as I'm going along. I'm trying not to be influenced by too many people out there and just looking at the world differently. So in a lot of cases, I'm reinventing the wheel. So my communications plan is typically straightforward. I always start with an objective and then try to figure out how to solve that objective. And then I'll put together a PACE plan that includes a primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency modes of communication. For this particular exercise, let's look at the objective. Obviously, it's to establish a contact with a known quantity, in this case, Jason, William, and my buddy Robert, and we want to do so on HF. So if we scroll down quite a bit and work backwards, I think the most important thing that I found useful is starting with the appropriate band selection. From there, you can go and pick the appropriate antenna and radio. That's why when people ask me, what radio do I buy, what antenna do I buy, I can't tell you. Everything has a purpose. So what I started with was something called VOACAP, Voice of America. It's an HF prediction tool, and it allows you to figure out how to model two stations. And we're not going to jump into the tool too much. I just want to show you, I believe, a screenshot I captured when I did the modeling about 5 days prior. And what you'll see here is that at 1700 UTC, along this line here, all the way up to 2200 UTC, it's bright red. And these colors correspond to the prediction of the software, and red indicates close to 100%. You can kind of see if we work our way down at 1700 that we start to go from 90% when we hit, I think it's the 15 meter band, 17, 20, blah, blah, blah. So that's how I personally picked it. And maybe it's a good time to actually show you a little bit more about that tool. So the first thing I actually do is I'll go and enter in the target call sign just to get their grid square or geo coordinates. And you can see that that's not Jason, it's somebody else. So Jason KM4ACK, he's out 1,454 miles, and his grid square is EM65. So you can cut and paste this and put it into the VOACAP tool. I have a shortcut in mind. I have got this analysis tools section where I can copy to clipboard and open up vocap.com HF. And all I'm going to do is put his call sign in here. And then we'll zoom in here. All right, so I like to start actually by modeling our antennas. In general, the antennas that I usually just use the standards for the other station because it'll give me the best chance of success. When I was doing my research on how to find the best antenna to basically maximize directionality, a friend gave me his LURS manual, or told me to buy a reproduction copy of his LURS manual from the US military. And in chapter 6, they talk about the Terminated Sloping V. And this antenna has the characteristics of being able to have unidirectional capabilities. And depending on which band you want to work, the angle, opening angle will change. And the Chameleon document actually has all of those. For 12 meters, the opening angle was 75 degrees. Also, if you go back to my MCOM tools software here, you'll also notice that from my station to his, I also calculate a bearing of 77 degrees. So I had the bearing, I knew I wanted to use a unidirectional antenna, and the Terminated Sloping V was something I had on my radar for a while. Now that antenna is supposed to have about 2.6 more of dB of gain over a standard dipole. So in my modeling for 12 meters, I didn't cheat, but I went ahead and picked a 2-element Yagi, mostly because that's the closest thing. And what you can do now is go ahead and select our mode. I went with single sideband because we wanted to voice and challenge yourself with voice. And I knew that I wanted to be cognizant of power, so I picked 25 watts as my starting point. And then I went ahead and hit the prop wheel. And while this is actually today and not yesterday, you can still see here that under 1700 UTC up to about 2200 UTC, the 12 meter band gives us the most success this time of year to make this contact. So once I figured out band selection and frequency selection, it was pretty straightforward. I did some propagation analysis and I use FT8. And I don't use FT8 for in general, but I do like to know where my signal is going. So at 1700 UTC, about 3 days before, I ran some FT8 experiments, and I noticed that I was propagating quite a bit out into Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, in the direction I wanted to go. So I knew that was a great way to go. The next thing I looked up was characteristics about the band plan. And the reason for it is I have never worked the 12 meter band. In fact, everybody on this exercise has never worked 24 or 12 meters before, or 24 megahertz. So I pulled this from the APRS band plan, and then also some Wikipedia just to figure out where frequencies were. So this is really kind of how I figured out what frequencies were in use, which were available, and I tried to stick with this area over here which had all of the modes. So now this takes us back to, I've got my frequency, I have my power, I have my antenna selected. What do I do for radio selection? Well, I decided to bring my Yaesu FT857D man pack because it'll do 100 watts on HF. And then as a backup, I brought the guy behind me, my new FT897D, and they basically have the same capabilities. So let's go ahead and quickly go through the sequence of events and some of the exercises we went through. So Carl met me here at 0700. He was supposed to bring a 25-foot mast for my Jeep, and we were planning actually on deploying in a much easier area. He forgot it, and it actually turned out to be pretty cool because we then had to do a true field deployment. So we took the Jeep to the same location, and I had known that there was a tall Palo Verde, probably about 20 to 25 feet up, and we were able to improvise and put that up there. We had some time afterwards, we set up a small shelter. I used my USJ poncho, which you guys have seen in other videos with my trekking poles, and I sat under that position. So at that point, we had about an hour or so before our contact, and we just enjoyed some coffee. So first things first, in terms of our pace plan, the primary mode was supposed to be single sideband voice on 12 meters, and I put 3 frequencies spaced out 5 minutes apart, spaced out 5 kilohertz apart. Now, the first frequency at 1700 UTC was actually being used by a gentleman from Ireland. I made a contact with him, Jason heard him, so I knew that we were already screwed for the first 5 minutes. We were supposed to go down 5 minutes later, down 5 kilohertz, and I screwed up. I was thinking just 5 kilohertz. I figured since I wrote my plan, I didn't need to look at it, and I went up in the wrong direction. So thankfully, Jason went ahead 5 minutes later and went down to figures 24.960, and we made the contact in our first go. So that was my mistake. So what I learned here was there is value in having multiple frequencies at multiple time slots spaced apart, because if you miss each other, either you missed your window for a technical issue or there is another station who's using the frequency, we have the ability to keep moving down and not guessing, because we did not use cell or internet whatsoever. I had a couple of other frequencies for 20 meters listed, but we skipped that. For alternate, we decided to do digital, and I wanted to try out fldigi because we have a lot of success in the region with it for VHF, UHF, and HF. And we were successful on our first attempt. So we communicated over a voice channel on HF, and I said, hey, let's go ahead and try it. He's like, sure. So we went to, on 12 meters, figures 24.955, and we made the contact. We used Contingency 4250. It's a good mode for HF. No issues. In fact, I made another contact with my buddy William, whom I work with in my full-time job, and pretty cool stuff. Now, our contingency was to use Winlink, and the goal there was to hit whatever Winlink station we could on our own. It was not a peer-to-peer session. I had some issues. I was able to get a session going with a local station 60 miles from me on, I believe it was 40 meters, but I kept on having some interference and my signal dropped. I switched over to another station in Denver, Colorado, had more success, but ultimately I also had some interference that caused that signal to drop. So I never got Jason's Winlink email. He was able to get his through. The last thing we did for emergency was we decided to fall back, or I did, on APRS. Jason thinks we should have gone with JSA call, and I do agree with him. That will be the plan in the future. And he was at his house, so he had a digipeater, so sort of cheating. He got his message to me. I jumped in the Jeep, used my Kenwood D710, and I also sent him a message. So I hit 3 out of the 4 communication methods. He hit 4 out of 4. So I'm going to call this 100% a success. So that's how I like to do my planning, guys. There's some other details in here. For those of you who are wondering, I also shared as a perk with the people on Buy Me a Coffee who are the members about 3 days in advance this entire combo plan. They got the PDF, they got the doping chart, and they were able to shadow that exercise. So that's another perk I was thinking I would send to the actual members. So thank you guys so much. All right, guys, there's one more thing I want to talk about, and that's about the Chameleon Tactical Dipole 2.0 or CHOT TD 2.0. Again, a big thanks to Carl from Chameleon for coming out and also sending that my way. Now, I used the that kit, plus he also sent me the HPD, which is the High Performance Dipole or Antenna Kit, and it gave me those 2 extra 108-foot sections, and that's what we used for the V-beam to get a little bit more gain. Don't know if I mentioned it, but the cool thing about that antenna too is that since you kind of null out the backside and since you have the opening angles, it's actually good for cutting out the noise behind you. So I don't know if my receive signal from Jason and from Robert and from my buddy William were improved by the fact that we had that configuration. I did receive their signal better than them receiving mine, so I don't know if maybe we had the angle of radiation off. Either way, it was a success. Now that CHOT TD 2.0, let me tell you how I plan to use it and the applications that I want to use it in. That is a very heavy antenna. It's much heavier than I would ever carry man portable. So for me, that is always going to be an antenna that I'm going to use as a temporary deployment when I have access to a vehicle and specifically have access to my receiver hitch and my receiver hitch mast mount, which we did not get to use on this exercise because all I have to do is throw up the pole and then use that single support, and assuming I have enough space, run that out. That antenna will also run in a number of other configurations, whether it is a sloping V, a traditional dipole, a delta loop, an off-center fed dipole. So take a look at the manual because it actually shows you how each antenna has different characteristics for low, medium, and long range skywave propagation. I probably would also use that antenna at the house, but in general, the big takeaway is that that is a heavy antenna. It's well built, rugged, does a lot of things, but again, its use really should be looked at in terms of your intended applications. It would also work well as a permanent antenna for the home, but for right now, I'm going to earmark that one as my portable antenna for the Jeep and for the RV. All right, guys, again, I want to give another shout out to the people on Buy Me a Coffee. You guys are amazing. You guys are getting this video ad-free about 5 days before. I also have some more goodies that I'm going to send your way. So thank you, thank you, thank you. So feel free to come in and help support what I'm doing. Like I said, guys, I want to do this full time. Don't have coffee for whatever reason. It's actually later in the afternoon. But with that said, I'm the Tech Prepper. Be strong, be safe, and be prepared.
They could have fucked around with that. Okay.
Oh, all right. I almost fell in another cactus and Carl just demonetized my video. So there may be a few more F-bombs since we're already there.